The Great Lakes, they're beautiful, sure, but they're also incredibly deadly. Underneath those waves, there's a huge graveyard, literally thousands of shipwrecks telling a silent story. But what if? What if some of those ships never actually stayed at the bottom? Today, we're going on a hunt for the legendary ghost ships of the Great Lakes. So, let's start with a number. 10,000. That's the estimated number of shipwrecks in the Great Lakes. And I say estimated because, well, nobody really knows the exact count. It's just staggering. It gives you an idea of the sheer scale of what we're talking about, hiding right under the surface. And with those 10,000 wrecks came a massive human cost. We're talking an estimated 30,000 lives lost. 30,000 people. That's 30,000 stories that just ended. And it's that tragedy, that loss, that really becomes the soil where these legends we're going to talk about start to grow. You've probably heard this before, right? It's from Gordon Lightfoot's famous song about the Edmund Fitzgerald. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead when the gales of November turn gloomy. Man, that line, it just perfectly captures the feeling, the unforgiving soul of these lakes. It really sets the perfect kind of spooky stage for the mysteries we're about to dive into. All right, so first up, Graveyard of the Great Lakes. You gotta ask, what makes these lakes so incredibly dangerous? I mean, the name lake is kind of misleading, isn't it? You think lake, you think calm summer days. But the truth is, this place earned its name, the Graveyard of the Lakes, for a very, very good reason. So here's the thing you have to understand, the biggest problem for any sailor out there. You're not on a lake, not really. You're on an inland sea. These bodies of water are so huge, so vast, they literally create their own weather. A storm can just pop up out of nowhere with the kind of speed and violence you'd expect to see on the Atlantic, not in the middle of North America. And the dangers are just relentless. First, you've got these hurricane-strength winds whipping up massive waves. We're talking 30 feet high or more. But then you've got this other really unique danger, the ice. See, because it's fresh water, it freezes fast. It can coat a ship, its entire top structure, with tons and tons of ice in almost no time, making it super top-heavy and unstable. It's just a deadly, fatal mix of factors. Okay, so we've established there are thousands of actual physical wrecks down there on the lake bed. But what about the ships that people say never quite made it to their final resting place? This is where things get really interesting. This is where history starts to blur with the supernatural. Let's talk about the Phantom Fleet. And don't think for a second that these are just dusty old sailors' yarns. Nope. Just a few years back, in 2016, a videographer up near Marquette on Lake Superior caught this bizarre footage. It looked for all the world like a ghostly tall ship just rising out of the waves. Of course, the video went totally viral. It just goes to show the idea of ghost ships is still very, very much alive today. So let's be clear on what we mean by ghost ship. Because in all this folklore, the definition is actually super specific. It's not just some spooky, haunted wreck sitting at the bottom of the lake. No, a real ghost ship is a vessel that people see sailing out on the open water after it's already been reported as sunk or burned or completely lost. All right, it's time. Let's get into the stories themselves. We're going to dive deep into 3 of the most famous, most chilling legends of the Great Lakes. Each one has its own crazy story of a final ghostly journey. So we have to start with the first, the oldest ghost story of them all, Le Griffon. We're going all the way back to 1679. This was a brand new ship, the very first of its kind on the upper lakes. It got loaded up with a fortune in furs for its first trip back, sailed out onto Lake Michigan, and just poof, vanished, gone without a trace. And for more than 300 years now, as people have been searching for the physical wreck, sailors have sworn they've seen it, a phantom ship sailing silently, forever stuck on that one lost voyage. Okay, this next one is really weird. The Cursed Voyage of the Erie Board of Trade. What makes this story so strange is that it might be a ghost story in a totally different way. It might be about a ship that never even existed. It's a famous legend from 1883. But here's the thing. When you check the official records, there's no proof a ship with that name ever even sailed, let alone sank. How weird is that? So the story goes like this. It's 1883. A new guy on the crew gets sent up the mast. The problem? The rope holding his chair was old, frayed, totally unsafe. It snapped. He fell to his death on the deck. But right before he died, he cursed the captain. For the whole rest of that trip, the crew said they were tormented by this ghostly white shape that would just appear on deck right where the poor guy died. After that voyage, the ship supposedly set out on Lake Huron and just vanished forever. At least, in this world. But of all the ghost ship stories, there is one name that is the name. The big one. The SS Bannockburn. It's known as the Flying Dutchman of Lake Superior. And when it disappeared back in 1902, it launched what is probably the most famous, most endearing ghost story on all of the Great Lakes. So the Bannockburn goes down in a nasty November storm on Lake Superior, taking its crew of 20 with it. And here's the key. No real wreckage was ever found, nothing definitive. But ever since it was lost, sailors on other ships have reported seeing it. It's often spotted between Port Austin and the Sioux Locks, and the story they tell is always the same. They see the ship, on course, looking totally normal, and then it just sails into a bit of mist and is gone. Okay, so are these really spectral ships with ghostly crews still at their posts? Or could there be something else at play here? This is where we have to look at the science, the logical explanations that try to make sense of all these sightings. We're at the crossroads of folklore and, well, physics. So there are a few really solid, logical reasons for these sightings. First up, you've got something called a superior mirage. It's really common on the lakes. Basically, layers of air at different temperatures bend the light, and it can make a ship on the horizon look like it's floating or distorted or stretched out, kind of like that tall ship in the 2016 video. Then, of course, there's just plain old fog and mist, which we know can play all sorts of tricks on your eyes. And finally, you have to consider human psychology. When you're in a place that has seen so much tragedy, your brain is kind of wired to look for patterns, for stories. It wants to make sense of it all. So a simple trick of the light can easily become a powerful, lasting legend. But look, whether you lean towards mirages or you think there's something more going on, one thing is for sure. The search for these lost ships is still happening. And today, with modern technology, we're actually turning these old legends into real, tangible, and honestly, breathtaking discoveries. Yeah, today's shipwreck hunters, guys, from places like the Great Lakes Shipwreck Museum, they have some incredible tools. They use side-scan sonar, which basically maps the bottom of the lake. Think of it like mowing a lawn with sound waves, looking for anything that doesn't belong. When they find a hit, they send down an ROV, a remotely operated vehicle. It's a little robot that sends back live video from depths that are way too deep and dangerous for a human diver. And this tech leads to some absolutely mind-blowing finds. Check this out. The Cornelia B. Windiet. This ship vanished with its entire crew in a storm way back in 1875. For more than a century, it was just another story, another lost ship. And then they found it, sitting perfectly upright 180 feet down at the bottom of Lake Huron. A real-life ghost ship brought back from the depths. Say, the water in the Great Lakes, it's cold, it's fresh, and there's not a lot of oxygen down deep. And that combination acts like a perfect preservative in a way that salty ocean water just can't. So when they found the Windiet, its masts were still standing, the cargo of grain was still sitting in the hold. It's an unbelievable, almost perfect state of preservation. It's like someone said, finding these wrecks is like discovering a time machine from more than 130 years ago. So that kind of leaves us with one final big question, doesn't it? As our technology gets better and we find more and more of these lost ships, does that put the ghost stories to rest? Or does finding the proof, seeing the tragic reality of how they ended, just make the legends even stronger? Does it make sure they sail on forever, at least in our minds? The answer to that, well, just like the lakes themselves, it's pretty deep and mysterious.